we are all compensated by how easy it is to replace us.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So if you have a brain tumor, I don't know how to do brain surgery. The guy that does or the gal that does, they have a lot of skill, a lot of education. That's why they make a lot of money. So they're very difficult to replace. But let's look at it the other way. Let's say there's a lot of welding and like labor jobs that people just don't want to do. So they're difficult to replace.
Today, on our very first episode of Make Yourself at Home, we're joined by David Chudyk.
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 Okay. That's right. Chudyk. So that's a Ukrainian last name. Now, I've never been to Ukraine, but my grandmother, interestingly, she was born in the Ukraine, and that was back in 1910 or so. And I was taller than her, and I'm not tall. I was taller than her when I was like 10 years old. And I think when you were growing up in that part of the world, you literally might have had a few bites of a potato during World War I every few days. And I think that she was literally just undernourished because everybody else in my family is basically normal size. But so when your kids complain about anything, just tell them you could have been born in the Ukraine in 1910 and had a much harder life. And none of us chose to not be born there.
True. My husband is actually 100% Polish. And while he was born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, his father has a checkered past from everything that went on over there. So very much so how we are blessed completely to be born where we're born and in the time frame that we are born in.
United States is not perfect, but it would be tougher to do an objective study and say there would be a better time in the history of the world to live. We're not starving to death. Yeah, we can definitely talk about some problems, but life's pretty good.
That is for sure. But David is a seasoned certified financial planner who's been helping individuals and businesses make confident, informed financial decisions since 2005. He's based in Greenville and Seneca, South Carolina, which is not too far from where we're at here in Charlotte. David specializes in investment management, retirement planning, tax strategy, risk planning, and estate design. And we're excited to start our podcast with his insights, hopefully offering some really valuable information for not only just young professionals and business owners, but everyone. Because as much as we try to get away from our financial decisions, they are only waiting for us later.
Absolutely. So have you had times personally in your life where maybe money was more plentiful and other times where it wasn't? Or maybe there are times where it was handled well and other times when it wasn't?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I tell my kids and my nephews, like everybody is running from pain of some sort. Whether you use drugs, drink, or spend money, have sex, any of the things that are the fun things, we all are running from those things. And as a real estate agent, yeah, as much as we would love our commissions to be level and come in exactly the second week of every single month, it doesn't always happen that way. Sometimes you have 6 closings, sometimes you have none. So I have learned how to budget as quickly as I possibly can, but yeah, I still feel bad and I want to buy me something pretty.
It's hard. Yeah. No, so I have two really big core beliefs. Number one is how we handle our money should positively impact our lives and the lives of those around us. So money's not the root of all evil. Maybe the love of money is, or pride and those kind of things are. But let me give you an example. We have twins that are at the University of South Carolina. One of us called us 2 Saturdays ago and his car wouldn't start. Turned out to be a battery. Couple $100, whatever. The problem solved. That problem was simply solved by money. Nothing more, nothing less. Without the money to solve that problem, it's a major tragedy. So when we have some margin and when we have the ability to solve problems with money, the ones that money can solve, then that's one of the ways that we make our lives better is through lack of stress by proper handling of money. Now, I have a couple real estate clients and they get big chunks of commissions and then they get no commissions and then big chunks and then smaller commissions. And it's not like an every week salary. They have gotten themselves in some trouble with not withholding taxes and planning for, and then, that comes up and that hits you, right? Like around when you're filing your taxes next year, if you're like, oh, poop, I didn't withhold any taxes. I got this $10,000 commission check and I spent $10,000, which you can't do. You have to put some of it aside. And then that causes stress. And when you're stressed, you're not the best husband. You're not the best wife. You're not the best father. You're even not the best at your job because there's stress. To the extent that we can get money out of our way in our lives just to allow us to live good lives as good human beings, that's really like the whole job and the whole purpose of making financial planning decisions. Now, if I go to a networking event and somebody says, "Hey, what do you do?" Well, I'm a financial advisor. Should I buy Nvidia? Should I buy Apple? My answer is, I don't know. Like, I literally don't know. For you, you may need to pay off credit card debt, or you may already have a bunch of Nvidia, so you should buy something else. So I have no idea. So what people think we do and what we actually do, what they think we do is give them the hot stocks. What we actually do, or the good ones of us, is we actually almost make a life plan around their money.
Yeah. That's the thing, is we all know we want that shiny thing. We always want and we are an instant gratification society, that as soon as the PS5, the Apple 17, the whatever it is that's new and shiny, and we want it. We want to be the first ones to have it. We want to be the ones that, that can say that we got it and we got it first or whatever. Is it going to benefit us in the long run? So some of the things that we do, I have 4 boys and they're all in their 20s. Thankfully, it's my husband and I, we merged our families together, and our boys have been friends since they were in elementary school. We all kind of flowed together really easily, but we all have too much stuff. And so when I'm sitting with my boys and I'm like, all right, guys, we can either go and do things or we can have things. Which would you prefer? And I want my boys to know that, oh, do you remember when we went to St. Thomas? Or do you remember when we went to England? Or do you remember? And take that. And that's what we aim for, instead of giving stuff, because we're coming into the holiday season. And that's usually when people, our second oldest read an article that said the average American spends $941 per person on Christmas gifts. And I'm like, oh, good Lord, I'm way behind. But I can't imagine spending $4,000 or $5,000, $6,000 on just my family. I'm like, I would rather go somewhere, because that's a really nice vacation. That's my used car, my first car. No, you can't buy you can. Yeah, you can still buy it.
Not one that runs, not one that runs. Yeah. Yeah. I think one of the things that I talk to clients about is we have to know facts. We have to know your financial facts, which are different than my financial facts, which are different than LeBron James's financial facts and anybody else. So there are items and experiences that are within your financial reality. I don't like using the word afford, because I don't like saying you can't afford or you can't afford, because to me that sounds limiting. But there are things that are within your financial reality, and there are things that are not within your financial reality. Now, we have to do one of two things, or actually both, if possible. You have to live within your financial reality, or you have to change your financial reality. Now, a realtor like yourself, I'm sure if we looked at the range, all realtors, some years have really great years. Some years you may literally be almost homeless. Being in business for yourself, which you are, you have some opportunity to change your financial reality. Now, there are people who say, you know what, I just like my salaried job, and I know I'm never going to make millions of dollars, and I'm just going to live within that. And that's okay also. But if you have a $30,000 salary, you have to have a $25,000 lifestyle or less. That's just math. And I don't like it, because I'd like to live off of millions and millions of dollars. So we have to make sure that we know our facts, our financial facts. And some of the financial facts that we need to know are like, when do I want to retire, and what rough amount of money do I need in a pool of money in order to give me a lifestyle that I want when I retire? And then maybe we need to back into, how much money do I need to put into my retirement accounts every month? And then there's, what type of retirement accounts? Should I have Roth IRAs or simple IRA or IRAs, and all of those things? But the bottom line is, we don't drift to excellence in any part of life. So you don't drift to health. And honestly, most guys my age were jacked in high school, and they're no longer jacked. And it's not because of one ice cream sundae yesterday. It's because of 100 calories too much per day for 20 years. And now literally you're twice the size as you were in high school. So that's just drift is all that it is. Nobody or almost nobody gets in $100,000 of credit card debt overnight. It's just, I always pay it off except for this month. It's been a slow month and I'm not going to pay it off this month, but I'll do it next month. And then you don't. And then all of a sudden, 3 years from now, you have 10, 20, 30, $50,000 of debt. So that drift is what happens. And that's what kills us. And it's not just the poor people, quote, using air quotes, the wealthy people drift a lot. I have some very high earning clients that literally could not come up with $5,000 in cash if they needed to. And that's just because they're 400,000 is coming in and 399 is going out. And where I live, $400,000 should be a really good lifestyle, but you just can't have two $120,000 Suburbans. You could maybe have two Suburbans that are a couple years old. Got to know your facts.
And that kind of leads into so many people feel intimidated by money conversations. What's one mindset shift that can make people feel more at home with their finances?
That's a good question. I have two of them. Number one, and I'm just going to talk to the dudes out there, and you may or may not agree as a non-dude, but guys equate their self-worth, a good part of it, with how much money they have. And that's wrong, because you can be very valuable to the world and a loving husband and father and maybe not make that much money. But like for guys, it's I'm not important and I'm not valuable if I don't make a lot of money. So number one, you got to detach your self-worth from how much money you make or how much you have. And on the other side, just because you make a lot of money, you can be an a-hole too. Like you can be a really bad person that makes millions of dollars. And on your deathbed, you might look back and say, you know what? I wish I would have acted differently. Even though I made a lot of money, I was not a nice person. So that's number one. Detach your money from your self-worth. Number two is you need help, whether it's your family, an accountability partner, or I really believe that in most areas of our life, we should hire professionals. Now, when you go to the doctor, you're just like another statistic. Nope, the doctor's not going home and say, ooh, guess what? Dee's cholesterol was high. She's probably, they don't care. They go on to the next patient. If I talk to someone who's a new client and they have more debt than they should, I see that all the time. It's no big deal. We're going to figure out a way. There's no judgment. I'm going to go home and tell my family, man, those people, they're horrible people and they spend recklessly. No, it's just, there's a symptom and we need to work towards a cure. But if working with a financial advisor is not an option or it's not something you want to do, work with somebody that you trust, either your spouse or friends or somebody like that, and get the facts out there. And just like if you go to the doctor and you say, hey, I've been having these headaches, the doctor's going to say, okay, we'll step on the scale. We need to weigh you. Let's take some blood because there may be some information in your blood work we're going to take your blood pressure and we may take a scan. Who knows what they're going to do, but it's all for a reason because they need to know the facts so they can diagnose you. Now, our money issues are part behavioral and part circumstantial. I would say they're much, much more behavioral. Most of us are in our current financial situation because of the things that we've done or didn't do. Now, there are times where the poop hits the fan and maybe you get fired for no reason, or somebody can sue you as a realtor unjustly, and that could cost you a lot of money. And I get it, but a lot of where we are financially is because of what we do. So let's figure out what the things are that we should be doing and the things that we shouldn't be doing. Now, one thing I will say, and you may slap me, but that's okay. There are two huge mistakes that people can buy. You can buy the most expensive house that the bank will lend you the money for. So if the bank will look at your income and say, we'll give you a loan that'll have a payment of $2,000, you should buy a house with a payment of way less than $2,000 because that leaves you no margin. But that's the second worst. The worst is buying the most expensive car that the bank will lend you the money for, because at least in theory, your house is going to go up in value. You can get an equity line of credit, blah, blah, blah. But your car is going to go down in value. So when, and 2 years from now, when you still have that $1,200 a month car payment and the car is worth a third of what it was and you're upside down, you're not digging out of that. So financial margin, hugely
That's
important.
one of the things that I teach all of our clients, especially our first-time home buyers. I'm like, guys, I don't sleep next to you. I don't pay your bills. I'm never going to tell you to spend more than what you're comfortable with. I said, but the bank, you're going to go in there. And I try to demystify a lot of what happens because especially first-time home buyers, they have literally jumped in age. So just in the last 5 years, first-time home buyers have gone from 28 years old to 38 years old. But
Wow.
With
Yeah.
that, I tell you, I said, you're going in and you're asking the bank, hey, I want to rent your money. And that's all you're doing. You are just renting
All
their
you're doing.
money. And so you shouldn't feel scared or nervous about any of this. It is literally just gaining information. And when the bank tells you, oh, and these are usually kids in their 20s, it's, oh, you qualify for a $600,000 house. So that does not mean you are supposed to buy a $600,000 house. I like lights. I like heat. I like eating. So you need to know
Yep.
what your budget is. And most people are like, what's a budget? And I do that with our kids now. It's okay, guys, you need to know what's coming in and what's going out, and how do you keep more of what's coming in and less of what's going out.
Correct. No, but now there is the reality that the real estate market is, I don't want to use the word insane or crazy, but it's insane or crazy. Prices have jumped up. Sometimes you have to make a decision. Look, this is more than I wanted to spend, but if I want to buy a house, this is just what it costs. But then you have to make adjustments other places. You may have to get a second job. And if you're 25 and you work a couple part-time hours per week, it's not going to kill you. Or you may have to drop the Hulu and Netflix and Apple TV. All of us, and I'm sure I could look at the recurring expenses, right? So I had 2 car wash subscriptions on my credit card. Got one, then another one opened up by my office. I got the other one. I intended to cancel the other one. I just didn't. So for a year, I'm paying for 2 car wash subscriptions. That's $500 or whatever the number is. So I guarantee you could look at your credit card statement, and there's probably some stuff that you literally don't use, and you wouldn't even be hurting yourself or sacrificing if you got rid of them. So that's another tip, is just look at your recurring expenses and see which ones like you just don't need or don't use. Because I'm not the guy who's saying, D, you need to live on beans and rice. I'm saying you need to live on what your financial reality is. And if you're doing well, I want you to have a good life. I want you to buy cool stuff. I want you to give money away. I want you to experience good trips, but you have to do well first in order to do that. You don't get to do that
Correct.
before you're doing well. And that's some of that delayed gratification.
And you walked right into what I was going to ask next, is if someone's feeling overwhelmed, and usually most of us are feeling financially overwhelmed and we want to put our heads in the sand, where's the first place to start? It sounds like your advice is the first place to start is to check your reoccurring expenses.
Correct. So there's a very simple formula that if you live by this formula, you will never be broke. And it's income minus expenses has to equal greater than 0. Now we can argue how much greater than 0, but if you're bringing in $1,000, you have to spend less than 1,000. You just do. And that's just, so we all have expenses that can be eliminated or reduced. Again, I think I have Netflix and YouTube TV, and I think we had a Hulu thing, and then we had Apple TV because there was some series, and we probably didn't cancel the 7-day subscription early enough, and it's on there. So I guarantee there's $100 to $200 of recurring stuff that we could cancel, and we don't even use it. And then I guarantee there are some other things that thankfully we have margin now, but if we didn't have margin, if we canceled Netflix didn't exist for 99.9% of human history, so we would still live. It would be okay. And we would actually like talk to each other and have a better relationship at night, right? Because you'd read a book, so we can all do that. Now, yes, baseline, you got to eat, you got to have clothing. You don't need a $50 gourmet steak. And people, here's another thing that just gets me. People say it's so expensive to eat healthy. Really? I don't know. Like, we get the $6 a pound ground beef at Aldi, and you can make 4 hamburgers out of that for $6. Whereas you go to Applebee's and it's $20 and it's not as good. And you don't know if the person in the kitchen washed their hands. It's just reality. We can make wise decisions.
And I know everybody gets picked on. I'm not a coffee drinker, but people, Starbucks. If instead of having one a day, make one at home 3 days a week.
Yeah. I do things differently. So when you're in my business, you start thinking about like future value. So the $6, that $6, if I invested it and got 10% on, it's going to double every 7.2 years. So would I rather have the coffee, which I have a Keurig at my office, so it's basically free, or would I rather have just, now granted, I don't invest all the $6 that I want to spend on coffee, but you can't spend $200 or $300 a month on coffee if you're a normal person and still have money left over to invest. You just can't. Most people don't have that much. So if you think about it that way, the opportunity cost, when you have an asset or a resource, When you spend the resource, not only do you no longer have the resource, you have what the resource could have grown to. So if I had, let's say, $50,000 for a down payment on a house, okay, we can both agree houses generally go up in value 99% of the time. A couple periods in history where they didn't, but they're typically a very good investment. But instead of spending that $50,000 on a house, let's say I bought a car that was decreasing in value. And it was a cool car. So people were friends with me. I'm younger and they're thinking, wow, that's a cool car. But now that car's going backwards in value, where that $50,000 towards the house down payment would have been double the value in 5 or 10 years, especially with the way the housing market is right now. So I spent the resource, and not only do I not have the resource anymore, I don't have what the resource could have grown to. And that's when you have that mindset shift, it doesn't make you cheap. It just makes you wise with your resources.
You only have so much time. You can't buy more time. You can't add more breaths to your life. And my boys are all in their 20s. And so I tell them, I said, you're trading your time for money. That's what you're doing. So now is the time to trade all the time you have, because when you start having a girlfriend or a wife or kids, that time doesn't get split as easily. Right now, you're sleeping in bed for 4 or 5 hours that you could be picking up an extra shift, a different job, something along those lines, and making bank, putting it in the bank or investing it, and ended up with more that when it's time to grab your time back, you have the ability to do that.
Yep, absolutely. No question. And money, time is the only resource that you and I have the exact same amount of. One of us is smarter, which that would be you. Some people have more money than others. People have more talent, but time is the only thing that we have the same amount of.
What's the one financial principle that you believe truly changes lives when people finally get it?
Wow, there's quite a few, but if I had to think of one, it would be that we are all compensated by how easy it is to replace us.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So if you have a brain tumor, I don't know how to do brain surgery. The guy that does or the gal that does, they have a lot of skill, a lot of education. That's why they make a lot of money. So they're very difficult to replace. But let's look at it the other way. Let's say there's a lot of welding and like labor jobs that people just don't want to do. So they're difficult to replace. So those people can make pretty good money. So you have to be difficult to replace, and that's how you get compensated. And even in this upcoming world of AI, like cashiers are not going to exist. A lot of administrative type positions are not going to exist because a robot or a computer program is going to be able to handle those tasks. So we have to be difficult to replace. Does LeBron James, Michael Jordan, do they really help the world as much as a teacher or a nurse? No. But do 80,000 people pay hundreds of dollars to go watch the nurse draw blood on somebody? No. So that's why they make more money, because there are very few people that can do what they can do. And it may or may not be fair, but you have to be difficult to replace.
I've got several techs and vendors that they'll show up and it'll take them 15 minutes to fix what is broken. And people are like, why am I paying you all this money? It's okay. To fix it is $2. For all of my years of education and experience is the rest of the money.
Exactly. So I think that's really important. The other thing that I think is important with money, and we touched on it before, is we have to be purposeful. And I believe that we all have 4 healths that we need to manage and be purposeful with. So obviously our financial health, and even sometimes people say, sometimes you just inherit money. A lot of people inherit money and they blow it all and they become addicts and everything else. So just being given money doesn't mean you're going to keep the money. So we have to be purposeful with our financial health. We have to be purposeful with our physical health, right? And there are certain things that if you do them consistently, or if you don't do them, you're going to tend to be healthier. It doesn't mean that you're never going to get into a car accident. It doesn't mean that some weird form of cancer can't just show up, but there's risk factors, things that we can manage. Of course, there's relationship health, right? You mentioned boys. There's certain ways you can act that would make your boys not like you and you not have a good relationship. And then, of course, there's our spiritual health that we need to manage. So if we can get all 4 of them moving in the right direction, and of course, they're all related in some ways, then life is good. Now, they're not all 4 going to be a 10 out of 10 at every time, but it's going to be hard to have a 0 out of 10 in one area and then a 10 out of 10 in another area. So they do overlap, but if we can get all four of those areas moving in the right direction, not fixed, not perfect, but moving in the right direction, then I think life is good. When you can wake up and you're healthy, that takes physical limitations, takes them out of the way.
That's one of the things they say, that a healthy person has 100 wishes, but a sick person only has one. What are some of the most underrated signs that someone is actually doing better financially than they think?
Yeah. Can you sleep? Like literally, can you sleep at night? Do you have a little bit of money left over every month? And that can be $1, it could be $10,000. But do you have the most expensive stuff, the most expensive payments that you can afford? Or do you have some margin? Are you paying or able to pay cash for things? Or do you ask like payment wise? So I have a few clients that have 2 boats and it ends up like being $1,500 a month in boat payments. And I don't care who you are, that's a lot of money, especially, and these are not making millions. They're doing fine. When you're asking like, what do the payments cost as a way of knowing if you can afford things, I think that's a sign that you're not doing well, or the opposite would be true. And then I think really the other part is like, are your relationships around you good? If you're married, do you and your spouse at least agree mostly on like financial attitudes and systems, and or are you arguing about money? And if you're arguing about money, you kind of need to talk about these things, because money should be eliminating problems, not causing more of them. But we need to have our relationships in line with our money. Now, my wife, she physically pays the bills for us personally. So it is literally impossible that any bill would ever go unpaid. Now, if it were up to me, if I were the one in charge of paying the bills, the electric bill would get turned off because I just forgot, and we'd be living in the dark. And it's not that we didn't have the money, we just didn't pay it. And then we'd have late fees and everything else. So we have different roles in our family, but we generally agree like on our money philosophies. We're not exactly the same, but we generally agree.
It's funny. I heard a really, I thought was an oddball story the other day. So the biggest thing out there now is the Affirm payment plans, or so anytime you buy anything online, it's, oh, we could break it up into 4 payments. And this person had said that his dad was a financial advisor or something along that line. And he goes, I'm just using free money. I pay it off before it's due. I have the money, but this way I keep the money in my bank account and I'm earning more interest. I'm like, but how many of those would get away from you, especially if you're using it on like food?
Sure. Yeah. So at our house, we basically buy everything on credit card and then we do pay it off. And again, that's because my wife is like that person. Like, it is literally not possible that it won't get paid off. But that isn't, depending on who you are, you can get in trouble with that. So I think it depends on your personality, and it depends on your disciplines, on your support systems, things like that. But if we ever had a few months where, we just bought too much stuff, we would definitely have a conversation, and we would definitely both be mature enough to say, hey, we're drifting in the wrong direction. We need to drift back in the right direction. But without that healthy relationship, or if you're by yourself and you don't have that person that can hold you accountable, it is easy to say, I'll just pay it off next month. And then next month, I'll pay it off the next month. And then you never pay it off. And then this other thing, I'm just going to put on payments, but I'm going to pay it off, but then you don't. So you can't drift.
Having an accountability partner is huge, but also having the discipline to be able to do that. And that, again, we all grew up not having any of this education unless your parent instilled it in you. I know my mom didn't talk about money. My parents were divorced when I was little, so it really was just her. So I fell on my face several times and had to dig myself back out, or I guess undig the hole that I created a couple of times.
Yeah. And if you think about, what do we learn in school?
Yep.
We learn Shakespeare. I don't know. Like, I have never used Shakespeare. You learn theoretically when the dinosaurs lived. Like, I think that there actually were dinosaurs, but I can't even be sure. And maybe, but doesn't matter. Even algebra, and I don't know. But what we don't learn is, hey, D, here's what credit card rates mean. This is what, or here's what car insurance. Let's just talk about what are those numbers on your car insurance?
Yeah.
Here's what they mean. And then you can make some good grown up decisions when the time.
That was one of the things that we started thinking about, is all of the different things that we get taught over life. And like my boys, especially when they were little, yeah, oh mom, I want this toy. And I would tell them, okay, you have an allowance. I was able to give my sons allowance when they were growing up. And it wasn't much. We did half of their age in dollars. So if they were 6, they got $3 a week. If they were 10, they got $5 a week.
Okay. And when that $3 is gone, it's gone.
It's gone. But they were like, but mom, I want this toy. I'm like, okay, how much is the toy? Oh, the toy is $20. I'm like, okay, that'll take you 4 weeks of your allowance to be able to buy. I'm going to charge you interest of 10 cents a day to be able to buy that thing. And then I would have them figure out, okay, it takes me 30 days at 10 cents. That's going to cost me an extra $3. That's almost an extra week. I'll wait. Or, okay, I'll do it. And then they had to wait, and they had to wait to get their allowance for 5 weeks or they only got $2 that 5th week. So it's one of those that I tried really hard to instill in them, but I didn't get into compound interest or any of that other stuff.
Yeah. But I think really just teaching them, hey, when the $5 is gone, it's gone. I think that's a life lesson that most people don't learn. So kudos to you for teaching actual life skills to your children. Who knew that was our
Either
job
that
as
or coming
parents?
up with what's for dinner every night. Can you share a common financial myth that drives you crazy that you wish people would stop believing?
Yeah. The myths are that the government, the other political party, them, whoever they are, they're the reason why you're not financially successful. And the real reason, if you're not, is 80%, 90%, whatever that number is, you. The Democrats will say it's the Republicans will say it's the Democrats, and we all should vote for who we want to vote for, and we should be informed. But I've had good periods under presidents that I didn't vote for. I've had bad periods over presidents that I did vote for. So ultimately, I think the political parties in power have much, much less effect over mine. Now, I mean, there may be some general overall, but individual, you can literally choose to say, I'm not going to participate in the recession. I'm going to do whatever it takes. And that's not to put anybody down that's not doing well, because life is hard. But government policies have much less effect over individual financial success than we would sometimes like to think.
We have a lot more autonomy that we don't give ourselves credit for. We give away a lot of control that we really shouldn't. We have the power, but we have to choose to use it.
Let me give you an example. So I know a lot of people in the real estate industry, and the mortgage brokers back during COVID and after, they were making a killing with all these refinances, and God bless them. But a lot of them spent all the money. And then when the interest rates come back up and they're not doing as many mortgages, now it's not their fault that the interest rates went up, but it is their fault that they didn't save any of the money that they had earned. So now they're broke. So while if you ask any of them, should interest rates go up and will that affect your business? The answer is no, I don't want it to. And yes, it will affect my business. But then if you look back and say, yeah, you made $400,000 2 years ago. Did you save any of it for a rainy day? No. That's the part that they can, and we're all guilty of that. Trust me. I am, you are, I'm sure we all are. But the government didn't make them spend all their money. They bought cool stuff.
Yeah. And most people don't think about it. We had almost an entire decade of really low interest rates where it was basically free to borrow money.
Sure.
But nobody looks at the overall history. The average interest rate for mortgages has always been right around 6.4, 6.5%. That's the average. Now, we had the 80s that had 18, 19, 20, 21% interest, which didn't affect me. I was a kid. I know my first mortgage was at 9%.
Yeah.
My husband's was 12. So we're still hovering just
I don't want to brag, but I have 2 3% mortgages. So there you go. And I'm not getting rid of them.
And that's what a lot of people are like. It's like, I have that 3% mortgage and I'm not going to let go of it, which God bless them. I completely understand why, because we're now hovering. Or this morning, I got the update that said we're at 6.2%.
That's below what most of human history has paid.
It's
Even though
under
it seems
the
high.
average. It's under the average, but it's still more than the 3% mortgages that you have.
Sure.
Now, one of the things that they're talking about, but it's pie in the sky as of right now, I would love to see it happen. Mortgage people would not, but that you can carry your rate with you. And that's something that they do in the UK, in a lot of European countries, that when you get a mortgage, your first mortgage, or you get a really good mortgage, you actually can take that interest rate with you on a new mortgage. So
I don't know how that would work. That would be nice for the consumer, but also, is that too much government involvement in telling? I don't know, but to the consumer, it'd be cool. Sure.
Especially somebody like you who has 3% mortgage, that
Sure.
you could go buy the bigger house and still have the 3% mortgage.
That would be nice.
It would
that
be.
Would be nice.
Okay, so we've talked about some business owner things, and I think that's one thing that, as a real estate agent, and a lot of people, they're doing side hustles. They may not see them as businesses, but they really are. For business owners, what's the one mistake that can quietly drain the long-term value of their business?
There's actually 8 of them. So part of my practice is I help businesses to make their businesses more sellable. So business owners tend not to think about their business as an asset, but it truly is an asset, and it's an asset that you have control over. Like, I personally own some Apple stock, but the CEO of Apple doesn't call me asking me for advice on what new phone they should release. So hopefully Apple goes up, but it's not because of me. But my own business, I have control over. One of the things in a business, one of the 8 drivers of value, is having the owner involved with everything. So once you have a team of even one other person, you need to start having processes and procedures. You need to start having clients understand that they don't call your cell phone all the time. Like in my business, if you were a client and if you needed a $10,000 distribution from your account, you would know who to email for that. Because if you email me, I'm probably going to forget, and I wouldn't even forward it to the right person. And then you're going to be mad at me. So I would train you as a client. Hey, you're going to email Shelby whenever you need money, and she's going to process that, because that's just not, I don't handle the administrative parts because I can't do everything. So owners getting out of the way, I think, is hugely important. And then also, if you own a business and the customers are all used to dealing only with the owner, once that owner sells the business, a lot of those customers are not going to come back. So I wouldn't buy, let's say there's Dee's restaurant, and Dee is the one who cooks all the hamburgers, and Dee also works the register. And it's like in a small town, and everybody just comes by to see Dee because Dee's a nice person. As soon as Dee sells a restaurant to me and I'm there, they're like, I was coming here for Dee. She's not coming, so I'm not going to come back. Then revenue will drop. And so I would not offer a lot of money for Dee's restaurant in that case, because she is, in essence, the business. And when she's gone, then the business would suffer. So that's probably the biggest one, is the owner needs to learn how to get out of the way. And then also the owner is going to just have a better, easier life when they're not having to do everything. Because as owners, like, we get to be control freaks and nobody can do it as well as us. And the bottom line is, yes, they can. Teach them, here's what we want the outcome to be. You have some flexibility on how to get there. Like, again, in my business, somebody else can process a distribution much better than I can.
Yeah. That's one of the things that, as a real estate agent, I learned is, how many of these people do you see? This is the Bob Smith group. This is Bob Smith's team. This is Bob Smith Realty. We even have one up here. I don't know. I don't think he's in Greenville. He's mostly in the Charlotte area. It was Alan Tate Realty. Mm-hmm. Alan Tate was an actual person. He actually passed away just a few years ago.
That's funny. And they're all over the place. I see Alan Tate signs everywhere.
And he actually sold to Howard Hanna. And Howard Hanna now owns it. But a lot of these real estate agents, it's all based on their name. And that was something that I learned was, okay, it's not about me. It's at home in the Carolinas. And that's how we're trying to make people at home.
Sure.
What financial strategy that people often think is advanced, or I guess a top tier, but it's actually simple and almost anybody can do it?
Yep, dollar cost averaging. So just invest money in set intervals. So, if you can invest $1 million a month or $50 a month, don't try to time the market. Just set automatically to have money coming out of your checking account and going into some account, whether it's an IRA. There's some decisions there, but other than that, just set it and forget it. And then as a realtor, you may have a really good 6 months where you have extra money and maybe you need to dump that in. But dollar cost averaging, they call that DCA, just don't try to time the markets. Don't try to say, hey, I was going to put it in today, but the markets, they were down, but I think they're going to go down more tomorrow and I want to get it in tomorrow. Just automatic. So dollar cost average is going to tend to lower your average share price over time.
Okay.
Systems.
How do you personally balance helping clients grow their wealth while making sure they enjoy today?
That's the hard thing. So there's quantitative. How much money do you have? How much is in this account? How much is in that account? So we got to know those numbers. And then there's qualitative, which is what are the quality? What are the non-measurable things? So that's where we need to get to know our clients, what they actually like. So let me give you an example. There are people who are in their 60s and 70s that say, I've given my adult kids a beautiful life, and I am really cool with dying penniless and not leaving them any money. They're all doing well. They don't need the inheritance. And I want to have the most awesome last few years of my life by having cool experiences. For them, that's right. There are other people that say, I've given my adult children a great life. They have plenty of money. They don't need my inheritance, but I want to have my last breath and know that I'm leaving them X amount of money. So I'm not going to spend all of my money as my last year. That's right for them. So it really comes down to having a relationship with clients. And it's interesting because with AI, a lot of the information that we need to know is out there. So that's going to mean that I have to spend less time researching solutions and such, and I can spend more time learning like exactly what does Dee want to have happen with her money? Because if I ask, hey, Dee, what are your financial goals? Nobody other than the engineers who are retired and bored will say, I really just want to beat the S&P by 1.5%. You don't care. You probably have some goals that are like the end result, like maybe, I don't know, hypothetically, when you have grandchildren, you want to have enough money to pay for their college so that they'll look back. So you don't really care if you beat the S&P 500 by 1%. You just want to know that pool of money will be there to pay for your grandkids' college, if that's hypothetically important. So it's really about looking at what the goals are. You tell me your goals, and then I will work with you to find a path to get you to your goals, if they're possible. Sometimes they're not. Or sometimes you're not reasonable.
Oh yeah, everybody was like,
you have $38. You're 59 years old, and you want to retire at 60 with 10 million. I'm good, but I can't help you with that.
Oh, come on.
Yeah.
In your years of giving financial advice, what's the one piece of guidance that almost everyone ends up needing at some point?
I think we all can be more generous than we are. And I think that we can all look back and say, there's that person I should have helped, could have helped. There's that organization where I just knew that I should have written that organization a check, and I didn't. We're in America. Many people have some excess. And instead of having an extra Netflix subscription, giving an extra $20 to the homeless shelter probably would give me a better life. So I think generosity is something that and then also more tends to come to us if you're a believer like I am, but even if you're not, like when you're generous, like you're a nice person and good stuff comes to nice people, because people will say, hey, Dee's a nice person. You should use her as a realtor. And then all of a sudden you got a referral because you're generous, and that shows in how you carry yourself. So I think generosity is really important, even though it's almost counterintuitive. Normally the advice is save more money, but now I'm telling you to give more away.
We all have time, knowledge, an asset, whether it be or a resource. We all have something that we can give to someone else. We have an excess abundance of hats and scarves and gloves where they were, especially like littles. When my kids are grown, I had all of these little kid things. And so I started making homeless bags, and I donated all the kids' things to the homeless shelter if they were in good condition.
Sure. Absolutely.
That way, it's my kids can't use them. I might as well give them to somebody who can.
No question. No question at all. And again, if you're a believer, the woman with the one
Yep.
coin, that was as valuable as Elon Musk can write $100 million check and literally not know that it's gone. And that's how much interest he would have made in 10 minutes. Now, granted, the $100 million builds a hospital and the one coin doesn't, but I think in the eternal sense, that one coin is just as important.
Or more, because she would miss it
Yeah.
more. Yeah.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. No, you're right. It's more, not even.
If the listeners, if our listeners were to remember only one thing from today, what would it be? What would you want them to remember?
Well, first, I'd want them to remember that they should listen to the Weekly Wealth podcast. But secondly, I would want them to remember that, very simply, how we handle our money should positively impact our lives and the lives of those around us. If you work with me, then I kind of work with you to handle all the technical details. But the end goal is that we have a better life. Sometimes that means let's get debt under control so one spouse cannot work and stay home with the kids, if that's one of the values. Sometimes it means just saving up more so they can buy a house in Europe. It means whatever it means, and there's no right answer.
Thank you, David, for joining us today. If you're interested in David's services or his advice, we have all of his socials and contact information in the contact section below. Thank you so much for listening and for choosing to spend your time with us as we begin this new journey. If you've enjoyed the conversation, make sure that you follow the podcast, leave a review, share it with someone who might need a little of financial encouragement today. Until next time, take care of yourself, take care of your money, and always remember you deserve to feel at home in your own life. Thanks, David.
Thank you. This was awesome. I'm glad to share this time with you.
Thanks for joining me on Make Yourself at Home. I hope you found insights and inspiration to help you navigate your real estate journey with confidence. Don't forget to follow, subscribe, and share this show with your friends, because everyone deserves to feel at home. Until next time, stay informed, stay empowered, and keep making moves that matter.